Good morning, Boating on the Hudson readers and viewers. This morning we're at Chelsea Piers and we're going to meet with Nick Walther and he's going to show us actually how to make the beer. Hey guys, here comes Nick now.
Good to have you here. Good to have you guys here.
Thanks, Nick. And I'm going to get out of the way and let you explain the process to us.
Sounds like a plan. Welcome to the Chelsea Brewing Company. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we make beer here and a little bit about beer itself. Traditionally, the best beers are made of 4 ingredients: water, malted barley, hops, and yeast. Here at the Chelsea Brewing Company, we still brew beer very traditionally. The water we get is, surprisingly, New York City tap water. It's the same water that's been used for hundreds of years to make beer in the city. We get our barley primarily from Canada, but some comes from the Midwest, as well as the Pacific Northwest. Hops are the flower of a vine-growing plant. They add the bitterness and aroma you normally associate with beer. The yeast we use is very similar to baker's yeast, only it's specialized for brewing. We get our yeast from several laboratories that deal particularly in brewer's yeast. We reuse our yeast several times, in fact, and I'll show you how to do that later. As I showed you earlier, the grain we use comes whole. Before we can start brewing, we have to mill it. This blue room right here is our mill room. From there, after the grain is crushed, it is augered up to this top vessel here, which is called the grist case. When we begin brewing, we drop the grain into this upper vessel here called the mash tun. There, we combine it with water at about 150 degrees. At that temperature, enzymes in the barley begin breaking down the starches into sugars. After about an hour, we're left with a very sugary liquid called wort and the leftover spent grain. The wort we drain through this container here called the mash tun and then pump it into the kettle on my left. The spent grain is dropped through this chute into hoppers. We give that grain to a farmer who feeds it to cows. The spent grain is high in fiber and low in sugar, which makes it perfect cattle feed. The wort, which we drain off, is dumped into our kettle here. At that time, it's about 15% sugar and 85% water, with some trace minerals and vitamins left over. We boil that liquid for about an hour. This is very important. It allows us to sterilize that wort. It allows us to add the hops in. The hops add bitterness and aroma to the liquid and make it a very drinkable, pleasant beer. After about an hour to an hour and a half of boil, that very hot wort is dumped into our pump again and then pumped out to our fermentation vessels on the far side of the brewery. The fermentation tank holds 60 barrels, which is about 2,000 gallons of beer. The wort is put into these vessels at around 75 degrees, and then we combine our yeast. The yeast goes to work very rapidly, consuming the sugar and producing alcohol and CO2. After about 3 to 5 days, the fermentation is complete. The yeast has consumed all those sugars. What we're left with at that point is beer. We then crash that. At that point, we chill the beer rapidly. This makes the yeast go dormant and drop out to the bottom of the tank. As you can see, the tanks are conical at the bottom. This collects the yeast, which we can then pump into the next batch that we make. After the beer has been stored or lagered for about 2 weeks, we can then pump the beer out. It can go to our serving tanks, or it can be kegged and served. After the beer has been transferred into our bright tanks, it can be prepared to be kegged, to be served at other bars. We do have about 100 draft accounts throughout the city, or it can be moved to our serving tanks behind the bar.
So, as the summer wind turns to the fall chill, we are leaving the Chelsea Brewing Company. If you'd like more information, call them at 212-336-6440. Come down on a Saturday and get the whole tour in person. It's a great thing to do, summer or winter, by land or sea. This is your Gangplank Gourmet signing off for boatingonthehudson.com.